I'll use my computer to create a high-quality document with part one of the story based on the new outline targeting male viewers over 50 in the US with cinematic prose and emotional intensity. Let me first read the relevant skill documentation. Snow fell like shattered glass through the midnight air of Chicago, each flake catching the neon pulse of a shuttered liquor store. The wind cut sideways across North Canal Street, carrying whispers of a storm that meteorologists had warned would blanket the city by morning. But in the narrow alley between abandoned warehouses, another storm was already unfolding. Michael Blackwood's hands tightened on the leather steering wheel of his Bentley as the headlights swept across two figures locked in conflict. A woman yanking a small child through snow so deep it reached the girl's knees. One of her boots was missing, the other filled with slush and streaked with something dark that his mind refused to immediately recognize as blood. He could have driven past, should have, perhaps. At 55, Michael Blackwood had learned that involvement always carried cost. As CEO of Blackwood Medical Systems, he made decisions that affected thousands of lives daily, but always from a comfortable distance, protected by boardrooms and bottom lines. Yet something made him press the brake. The Bentley slid to a silent stop, tires hissing on black ice. The woman turned, startled by the sudden intrusion of light. Her face was sharp-featured and beautiful in a hollow way, makeup perfect despite the hour and weather. Her grip on the child's wrist was white-knuckled. The girl, perhaps 7 years old, wore a torn yellow coat that hung from her thin frame like a flag of surrender. Her face was gray with exhaustion, lips tinged blue from cold. "Move along," the woman called, voice cracking through the storm. "Family business." Michael should have known those words. Family business. The universal code for look away. Mind your own affairs, don't intervene. He had built an empire on knowing when to step back. But the girl's eyes found his through the windshield, which was wide and gray and desperate, and Michael Blackwood found himself opening the car door. The wind struck him first, colder than he'd anticipated, knife-sharp against his exposed face. He was dressed for a corporate dinner, not a rescue mission, cashmere overcoat, Italian shoes entirely wrong for the accumulating snow. His silver hair, usually perfectly styled, immediately disarrayed in the gusting wind. "Is everything all right here?" His voice came out steady, the same voice that commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals. "Mind your business, mister." The woman's tone was honeyed now, a practiced smile appearing. "My stepdaughter is just being difficult. We're heading home." Michael might have believed her if not for the girl's trembling lips and the cloth wrapped around her leg, now clearly soaked with blood. As he approached, flashlight from his phone illuminating the scene, he saw the bruises, fingerprints on her small wrist, the shadow of older marks beneath her collar. "Please," the child whispered, her voice thin as tissue paper. "I need to get home to my dad before it's too late." A small trickle of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth as she coughed, and something cold that had nothing to do with the weather settled in Michael's chest. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling despite the snow immediately soaking through his trousers. The woman answered before the girl could speak. "Sarah, and I'm Victoria Reed, her stepmother. We appreciate your concern, but we need to get going." Sarah's eyes never left Michael's. Her next words changed everything. "I have a heart condition. She stopped giving me my medicine 3 days ago." Victoria's face hardened, fingers digging deeper into Sarah's wrist. "She's lying. She's always making up stories for attention." Michael had built his fortune on medical devices. He knew the look of a child in cardiac distress. He stood, snow falling between them like a curtain, and made a decision that would alter the trajectory of 3 lives. "I'm calling the police." He raised his phone, thumb steady on the screen. "This child needs medical attention." Victoria's smile vanished like it had never existed. "You've made a mistake." Her voice dropped to a hiss. "A very expensive mistake." In the distance, sirens rose. Someone else had noticed the confrontation and called 911 before he had the chance. Victoria's eyes darted toward the street, calculating. When the red and blue lights began to pulse at the alley entrance, she released Sarah's wrist and backed away. "This isn't over," she whispered, then turned and disappeared into the labyrinth of the warehouse district footprints, quickly filling with a fresh snow. Sarah swayed on her feet, her small body finally surrendering to whatever battle she'd been fighting. As she began to collapse, Michael moved without thinking, catching her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing in his arms' bones, like a bird's beneath a thin yellow coat. Her skin burned with fever despite the cold. "Help is coming," he said gently. "You're safe now." Her fingers clutched weakly at his coat collar, eyes struggling to focus on his face. "Please don't let her take me back," she whispered. "She'll kill me like she's trying to kill my dad." Then her eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment Michael Blackwood felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years, the weight of a child in his arms completely dependent on him for protection. Without meaning to, words escaped his lips. "Don't worry, Dad's here." The moment the words left his mouth, they both seemed startled. Michael by what he'd said, Sarah by what she'd heard. For 5 years, he had avoided anything that reminded him of fatherhood. Now holding this stranger's child in the snow, something long dormant stirred in his chest. The ambulance arrived in a blast of light and urgent efficiency. As paramedics took Sarah from his arms, Michael stood watching snow accumulating on his shoulders. For the first time since the accident that took his wife and son, he felt fully present in his own skin. "Sir, are you a relative?" A young paramedic looked at him expectantly. "No, I just—" He hesitated, then made a second decision. "I found her. I'm coming with you." The paramedic nodded, perhaps recognizing something in Michael's expression that brooked no argument. As the ambulance doors closed, sealing them in sterile light, and the beeping of monitors, Michael looked down at Sarah. In sleep, the pain had smoothed from her features, leaving only a child vulnerable, wounded, and somehow, inexplicably, now his responsibility. The emergency room at Northwestern Memorial blazed with fluorescent intensity, a stark contrast to the gentle snowfall outside. Michael stood against the wall, watching doctors and nurses work on Sarah with practiced precision. His coat dripped melting snow onto the polished floor, his presence raising eyebrows among staff who recognized one of Chicago's wealthiest men standing sentinel over an unknown child. Dr. Emma Lewis studied the x-rays with a frown that deepened the lines around her mouth. At 48, she had seen enough cases of child abuse to recognize the patterns. She gestured Michael into a small consultation room off the main emergency area. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, recognition flickering in her eyes. "The situation is concerning. Sarah has multiple healing fractures consistent with ongoing physical abuse. But more critically, she has a congenital heart condition that's been severely compromised by medication interruption." Michael processed this information with the same focus he applied to corporate acquisitions. "What kind of heart condition?" Dr. Lewis pulled up a scan on her tablet. "Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She's had several surgeries but requires daily medication. According to her, those medications were withheld for at least 3 days." "That would be attempted murder," Michael said quietly. "It would," Dr. Lewis agreed, then hesitated. "There's something else you should see." She turned the tablet toward him, showing a chest x-ray. Within Sarah's small ribcage, partially obscured by her heart, was a small mechanical device. Michael recognized it instantly. "That's a Blackwood heart guard." His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "First generation?" "Yes, implanted approximately 7 years ago." Dr. Lewis watched his face carefully. "Your device saved her life, once before, Mr. Blackwood. It's why she's still alive despite the medication interruption." Michael stared at the image, feeling the weight of coincidence or fate pressing down on him. He had designed the heart guard after his own son was diagnosed with a heart defect. James never lived long enough to receive one, but thousands of children had survived because of the device created in his memory. "Is there a father in the picture?" he asked. "Hospital records show a David Collins as her biological father. We've been trying to contact him, but haven't been successful yet." Something in the name tugged at Michael's memory, but before he could place it, a social worker entered the consultation room. Ms. Andrea Wilson was a stern-faced woman with kind eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Blackwood, I understand you found Sarah and brought her in." "Yes. We've contacted local authorities about the stepmother, but there's a more immediate issue. Sarah needs a temporary guardian while we locate her father. All our emergency placements are full due to the holiday season." Michael understood the unspoken question. "How long?" 48 hours is standard procedure before we'd have to place her in the state system. After that, if no suitable guardian is found, she'd likely be transferred to a facility in another county. Michael thought of Sarah's desperate plea in the alley, her whispered fear that Victoria would kill her, the heart guard inside her chest that connected them through invisible threads of circumstance. I'll take her, he said, surprising himself for the third time that night. Both women stared at him. Mr. Blackwood, Ms. Wilson began cautiously. While I appreciate your concern, there are protocols. I understand the protocols. I also understand that child is in danger, requires specialized medical care, and has a device manufactured by my company keeping her alive. His tone left no room for debate. I have resources to protect her and medical staff on call. Draw up whatever paperwork is necessary. Before Ms. Wilson could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway, a woman in her early 40s, her dark suit identifying her before she spoke. That won't be happening so easily, Mr. Blackwood. Her voice was crisp, professional. Laura Chen, Assistant District Attorney. I'd like a word. The small conference room felt even smaller, with four adults engaged in what was becoming an increasingly tense conversation. Ada Chen leaned forward, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp with suspicion. Mr. Blackwood, while your concern is admirable, surely you understand how this looks. A wealthy single man wanting to take temporary custody of a vulnerable young girl he just met. Michael met her gaze steadily. I understand your concern. I also understand that Sarah Collins needs protection from a woman who deliberately withheld life-saving medication. She needs specialized care that most foster homes can't provide. And you just happened to find her in an alley. Chen's skepticism was palpable. I was driving home from a charity dinner. The alley is a shortcut my driver usually takes. Where is your driver now? I dismissed him earlier. I wanted to drive myself tonight. Michael didn't elaborate on why, how the anniversary of his family's death made him crave solitude, how the endless sympathy at the charity gala had become suffocating. Chen studied him for a long moment. You do realize we'll need to run a full background check. Of course, Michael reached into his pocket and removed a business card, sliding it across the table. My attorney's information. He'll provide whatever documentation you need. Delauder Lewis, who had been silent during this exchange, finally spoke. For what it's worth, Counselor Sarah needs consistent medical monitoring for at least the next 72 hours. Blackwood's home health staff would actually be better equipped than most temporary placements. Chen frowned, clearly weighing options, none of them ideal. 48 hours, she finally said. Temporary emergency custody only, with daily check-ins from social services. If we locate the father or find evidence of any impropriety, it ends immediately. Michael nodded once. Understood. As the women left to prepare paperwork, Michael found himself alone with the weight of his decision. For 5 years, he had carefully constructed a life devoid of emotional attachments, focused solely on expanding Blackwood Medical and the foundation he'd established in his son's name. Now, in the space of a few hours, he had upended everything. His phone buzzed Rebecca, wondering where he was. His sister had lived with him since the accident, ostensibly as his house manager, though they both knew she stayed to ensure he didn't completely withdraw from humanity. He texted back a brief explanation, knowing it would raise more questions than it answered. When he returned to Sarah's room, she was awake, small and pale against the hospital sheets. An IV-delivered medication to stabilize her heart rhythm, and color had returned to her cheeks. She watched him enter with wary eyes that had learned to distrust adult intentions. The doctors say you're going to stay with you, she said, voice stronger than it had been in the alley. Is that true? Michael approached the bed slowly, careful to telegraph his movements. Yes, if that's all right with you, just until we find your dad. Sarah studied him with an intensity that seemed beyond her years. Victoria will come looking for me. She won't find you, Michael promised. My home has excellent security. That's what my dad said too. The bitterness in her young voice was heartbreaking. But she always finds a way in. Michael pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, bringing himself to eye level with her. Sarah, I need to ask you something important. You said Victoria is trying to kill your dad. What did you mean by that? Sarah's fingers twisted in the hospital blanket. Dad got sick after he married her. Then he had a car accident last week. I heard Victoria on the phone after. She said the brake lines were taken care of, but he survived. Her voice dropped to a whisper. She doesn't know I heard. Michael felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Whatever he had stumbled into was far more dangerous than a simple case of child neglect. Where is your father now? I don't know. After the accident, Victoria took me away. Said he needed peace to recover. Tears welled in her eyes, but I think she's lying. I think she heard him. Michael made a mental note to have his security team begin searching for David Collins immediately. If the man was alive, he needed protection as much as his daughter did. Sarah, I promise you we're going to find your dad. He kept his voice gentle but firm. Until then, no one is going to hurt you. Not while you're with me. She looked unconvinced but nodded slightly. You have the same eyes as him. As who, my dad? She yawned, medication making her drowsy. Blue with little wrinkles when you smile. Michael hadn't smiled genuinely in years, but he offered one now, feeling the unfamiliar pull of facial muscles, long unused. Get some rest. We'll leave for my home when the doctors say you're stable. As Sarah drifted to sleep, Michael stepped into the hallway and made a call to his head of security. Frank Morris answered on the first ring despite the late hour. Frank, I need you to secure the lake house immediately. Full protocol, and I need you to find everything you can on a Victoria Reed and her husband, David Collins. Priority 1. Iswa Frank, a former FBI agent who had been with Michael for over a decade, didn't question the urgency. Consider it done. When are you arriving? Within hours. And Frank, I'll have a child with me. The silence on the other end was brief but profound. Frank was one of the few people who knew the full extent of what Michael had lost 5 years ago. I'll prepare accordingly, sir. Michael ended the call and stared out at the snow still falling steadily, transforming Chicago into a white landscape that concealed as much as it revealed. Somewhere out there, Victoria Reed was plotting her next move. Somewhere, perhaps, David Collins was fighting for his life. And here, in this sterile hospital corridor, Michael Blackwood had just placed himself between a predator and her prey. After 5 years of careful emotional distance, he had allowed himself to care about someone else's child. The implications terrified him almost as much as they awakened him. The Blackwood estate rose from the shores of Lake Michigan like a modern fortress, glass and steel, softened by fresh snow that transformed its severe angles into something almost magical. The security gate parted silently as the medical transport approached Michael, seated beside Sarah's gurney, watching her face for signs of distress. Rebecca Blackwood stood waiting in the grand entrance hall, her tall frame tense with questions she was too disciplined to ask immediately. At 44, she possessed the same aristocratic features as her brother, softened by warmth he had lost. Her eyes widened at the sight of Sarah, so small, on the gurney being wheeled into their home. The East guest suite is prepared, she told the medical team, then turned to Michael. Everything else is ready too. He nodded in understanding her meaning. Ready meant security protocols activated, staff briefed, and the necessary discretion ensured. Rebecca had always been efficient. The East Suite had been transformed in the hours since his call, medical equipment installed, the sterile necessities balanced with touches that might comfort a child. A small stuffed bear sat on the bed, a relic Rebecca must have retrieved from storage, where all evidence of James had been carefully preserved. Once Sarah was settled and the medical team had departed, leaving only a night nurse to monitor her condition, Rebecca finally pulled Michael into the adjacent sitting room. Explain, she said simply. Michael did, watching his sister's expression shift from concern to horror to fierce protectiveness. Rebecca had been a kindergarten teacher before the accident that took her nephew and sister-in-law. Afterwards, she had moved in with Michael, abandoning her career to help him navigate his grief. It was a sacrifice he had never fully acknowledged. So this woman is still out there, Rebecca concluded, and likely dangerous. Frank's team is searching for her now and for Sarah's father. Michael ran a hand through his silver hair. I've made temporary arrangements to keep her safe, but beyond that. Rebecca studied him carefully. I haven't seen you like this in years. Like what? Present. She touched his arm lightly. You've been a ghost since we lost them, Michael. He had no response to that truth. Instead, he changed the subject. The ADA is suspicious of my motives. Of course she is. The world is suspicious of kindness without agenda. Rebecca's voice held no judgment. But we both know why you couldn't leave that child in the snow. James, always James. His son's name hung unspoken between them. The night nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Blackwood, she's asking for you. Michael found Sarah propped against pillows, looking impossibly small in the king-size bed. The yellow coat had been replaced with soft pajamas that Rebecca must have acquired several sizes too large, but clean and warm. An IV still delivered medication, but color had returned to her face. "This house is bigger than my school," she said by way of greeting. Michael smiled slightly. "It's too big, really. Just me and my sister most of the time." Sarah studied him with that unnerving intensity. "The lady is your sister." "Rebecca, yes. She seems nice." Sarah's voice held the caution of a child who had learned that adults' kindness often came with conditions. "The nicest person I know, though." Michael confirmed, taking a seat beside the bed. "She used to be a teacher." "Was she mad that you brought me here?" "No, she was glad." He leaned forward slightly. "Sarah, I need to ask you some more questions about your father and Victoria. Is that okay?" She nodded, fingers twisting in the blanket again, a nervous habit he was beginning to recognize. "How long has Victoria been married to your dad?" "2 years." Sarah's expression darkened. "She was nice at first, brought me presents. Then after they got married, she changed." "When did your dad get sick?" "Last year. He started forgetting things. The doctor said it was stress, but he kept getting worse." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then last week his car crashed. Victoria said the brakes failed, but I heard her on the phone." Michael kept his voice gentle. "Do you know where they took your father after the accident?" "St. Mercy Hospital. But Victoria wouldn't let me visit. She said he needed quiet." Sarah's lower lip trembled. "Then yesterday she said we were moving away. She was packing our things when I asked about my medicine. She said—" Sarah stopped, swallowing hard. "What did she say, Sarah?" "She said I wouldn't need it anymore, that everything would be over soon." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I tried to run away, to find Dad, but she caught me in the alley." Michael felt cold fury building in his chest, but kept his expression neutral. "You're very brave. You know that." Sarah shook her head. "I'm scared all the time." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and placed his hand over hers. "I promise you we're going to find your dad and make sure both of you are safe." Sarah looked down at his hand covering hers, then up at his face. "Why are you helping me?" Victoria says nobody helps without wanting something back. The question struck Michael with unexpected force. Why indeed he had spent 5 years avoiding emotional entanglements, focusing solely on work and the foundation that bore his son's name. What had made him stop his car in that alley? "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because a long time ago someone helped me when I needed it most." It wasn't the whole truth, but it seemed to satisfy Sarah. She yawned, medication making her drowsy again. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" she asked, voice small. "Victoria always comes when I'm sleeping." "I'll stay," Michael promised. "And there are security guards all around the house. Victoria can't get in." Sarah nodded, but her hand tightened around his. "Thank you for stopping your car." As she drifted to sleep, Michael remained seated beside her, watching the rise and fall of her small chest. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white silence. For the first time in years, Michael Blackwood felt the weight of responsibility for another life, a weight that rather than crushing him seemed somehow to anchor him to the present moment. His phone vibrated silently in his pocket. A text from Frank. "Found something on Collins. Call me immediately." Michael gently disengaged his hand from Sarah's sleeping grip and stepped into the hallway. Frank answered on the first ring. "David Collins is alive," his security chief said without preamble. "Currently in intensive care at St. Mercy Hospital, listed in critical condition." Relief flooded Michael. What happened to him? "Police report says brake failure caused the crash," but Frank's voice held skepticism. "Car went off Lakeshore Drive into a barrier. He suffered severe trauma and has been in a medically induced coma since admission." And Victoria Reed. That's where it gets interesting. Victoria Reed doesn't exist, at least not the woman you described. We found 3 identities she's used in the past 5 years. Vanessa Reynolds, Victoria Madison, and now Victoria Reed. She has a pattern, sir. She marries wealthy men with health problems or valuable assets, and those men tend to have accidents. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. "She's a black widow." "Appears so. 2 previous husbands died under suspicious circumstances, but nothing was ever proven. She inherited substantial assets each time." "What about her connection to Collins? What would she gain?" Frank's pause was telling. "David Collins holds several valuable medical patents. One in particular caught my attention. He's listed as co-inventor on the original HeartGuard technology. Michael felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. What? He worked for Blackwood Medical about 7 years ago in the R&D department. Left suddenly for personal reasons, according to company records. The pieces began falling into place with terrible clarity. David Collins had helped design the device, keeping his daughter alive. The same device Michael had commissioned after his son's diagnosis. Frank, I need a security detail at St. Mercy Hospital immediately. Collins needs protection, and I need everything you can find on his connection to Blackwood Medical. Already on it, sir. Michael ended the call and leaned against the wall, mind racing. No wonder Sarah's HeartGuard had seemed significant. Her father had helped create it. And now Victoria, or whatever her real name was, wanted both Collins and his daughter dead, presumably, to gain control of his patents and whatever wealth he possessed. The coincidences were too numerous to be chance. Michael returning to the very technology that had consumed him after James's death. A child with his device in her chest. A father who had once worked alongside him without his knowledge. Rebecca appeared at the end of the hallway, expression concerned. Michael, what's wrong? He straightened, decision made. I need to visit St. Mercy Hospital tomorrow. David Collins is alive, and I think I know him. Rebecca's eyes widened. You think, wouldn't you remember? I was not myself after we lost James and Elizabeth. The HeartGuard development happened during my worst period. I delegated most of it. The admission cost him acknowledging how completely he had withdrawn from the world. Collins was apparently instrumental in its creation. And now his daughter has one. Rebecca shook her head slightly. That's quite a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Michael glanced back towards Sarah's room. Not after tonight. A crash from inside the room interrupted them. Michael was through the door in seconds, Rebecca close behind. Sarah was thrashing in the bed, caught in the grip of a nightmare, her small body tangled in the sheets. The IV stand had toppled, triggering alarms on the monitoring equipment. Sarah, Michael rushed to her side, carefully restraining her to prevent her from injuring herself. Sarah, wake up. You're safe. Her eyes flew open, wild with terror. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize him, fighting against his hold with surprising strength. Then awareness returned, and she collapsed against him, sobbing. She was here, Sarah gasped between tears. Victoria was here. It was a nightmare, Michael soothed, holding her gently. She can't get to you here. She always finds me, Sarah insisted, trembling violently. She said she'd kill me like my mom if I ever told anyone. Michael exchanged a glance with Rebecca over Sarah's head. Your mom, what happened to your mom? Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. Mom got sick and died when I was little. But before Victoria, Dad told me Mom didn't just get sick. Someone made her sick. A chill ran through Michael. Do you know your mom's name? Sarah nodded against his chest. Kathleen. Dad says I look like her. Rebecca helped right the IV stand while Michael continued to hold Sarah, feeling her heartbeat gradually slow as the terror of the nightmare receded. But his own heart was racing. Kathleen. The name tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place it. Would you like some hot chocolate? Rebecca asked gently once Sarah's breathing had steadied. It always helps with bad dreams. Sarah nodded shyly and Rebecca disappeared toward the kitchen. Michael helped Sarah settle back against the pillows, checking that the IV line was intact. I'm sorry I broke the stand, she said quietly. You didn't break anything, he assured her. And even if you had, things can be replaced. You can't. She studied him with those old eyes in a child's face. Victoria says I'm expensive, that my heart makes me a burden. Michael felt fresh anger toward the woman who had planted such thoughts in a child's mind. Your heart makes you a fighter, Sarah. That's something to be proud of. Did you make my heart thing? The doctor said you invented it. I had the idea for it, Michael acknowledged, but many people helped create it, including, it seems, your father. Sarah's eyes widened. Dad helped make it. He never told me. Sometimes adults keep secrets they think will protect their children. Michael adjusted the blanket around her. But I promise you this, no more secrets between us. I'll always tell you the truth, even when it's difficult. Sarah seemed to weigh this promise, then nodded solemnly. I'll tell you the truth too. Rebecca returned with mugs of hot chocolate, having clearly taken the time to add whipped cream and cinnamon small comforts that spoke of her years working with children. Sarah accepted the mug carefully, eyes widening at the first sip. "It's not from a packet," she said, surprised. "Rebecca makes everything from scratch," Michael explained, accepting his own mug. "It's one of her superpowers." A ghost of a smile appeared on Sarah's face the first he'd seen. It transformed her features, briefly revealing the child she should have been, unburdened by fear and illness. After finishing the hot chocolate, Sarah's eyelids began to droop again. Rebecca quietly cleared away the mugs while Michael adjusted the monitoring equipment. "Will you find my dad tomorrow?" Sarah asked sleepily. "I'll try," Michael promised, "and I'll tell you everything I learn." "He'll like you," she murmured, drifting towards sleep. "He always said good people help without being asked." As Sarah fell asleep, Michael remained beside her, processing everything he'd learned. David Collins, a former employee who had helped create the Heart Guard, a mysterious woman with multiple identities targeting both father and daughter, and somewhere in the background, a mother named Kathleen who had died under suspicious circumstances. Rebecca touched his shoulder gently. "You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." Michael nodded but made no move to leave. "I'll stay a while longer, just in case she has another nightmare." His sister studied him with the same penetrating gaze Sarah had employed earlier. "You know, this is just the beginning, don't you? Whatever's happening here, it's dangerous." "I know." Michael looked down at Sarah's sleeping form. "But for the first time in 5 years, Rebecca, I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Rebecca squeezed his shoulder once before leaving him alone with the sleeping child and the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Outside, the snowstorm had intensified, wind howling against the windows like a warning. Inside, Michael Blackwood stood guard, a sentinel against whatever darkness had pursued this child into his life. He had stopped being a protector the day he buried his wife and son. Now, watching over this stranger's child, he felt the slow awakening of something he had believed dead within him: purpose beyond mere existence, connection beyond obligation. Michael Blackwood had driven into that alley a man half alive. He had emerged with a child in his arms and a promise he hadn't known he was capable of making. Whatever came next, whatever danger Victoria Reed presented, he would face it head on. For Sarah, for her father, and perhaps in some way he wasn't yet ready to acknowledge for himself. Morning arrived with crystalline clarity, the storm having exhausted itself overnight. Sunlight glinted off pristine snow covering the Blackwood estate, transforming the severe architecture into something almost whimsical. But inside, tension hung in the air like an unspoken warning. Michael stood in his office watching the sunrise paint Lake Michigan in shades of pink and gold. He had not slept, his mind too occupied with the puzzle pieces surrounding Sarah Collins and her father. Frank had delivered a file during the pre-dawn hours, a comprehensive background on David Collins that raised more questions than it answered. The man had indeed worked for Blackwood Medical 7 years ago, part of the research team that developed the original Heart Guard. His contributions had been significant enough to warrant co-patent rights, yet he had abruptly resigned shortly after the device received FDA approval. No explanation, given, no forwarding information left behind. He had simply vanished from the corporate landscape, taking his considerable expertise with him. More curious still was the timing. Collins had departed just weeks after Michael lost his family, when Michael himself had retreated from active leadership, delegating most decisions to his executive team while he navigated the wasteland of grief. It was entirely possible they had never directly met, passing like ships in the corporate night. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Rebecca entered, already dressed for the day, in a simple sweater and slacks, hair pulled back in her customary practical style. "Sarah's awake," she said. "Dr. Thompson is with her now. He says her vitals have stabilized, but she'll need ongoing medication adjustment." Michael nodded, turning from the window. "And the security sweep? Clean, no sign of attempted intrusion, and the facial recognition at all entry points is operational." Rebecca studied him. "You didn't sleep." It wasn't a question. After 5 years together, his sister could read the signs of his insomnia with practiced ease. "I'll rest later." He picked up Frank's file. "I need to visit Collins at St. Mercy this morning. And Sarah, I promised I'd tell her everything I learn." Michael hesitated. "Could you stay with her? She seems to trust you." Rebecca's expression softened. "Of course, I've already rescheduled my appointments for the week." The casual way she reorganized her life to accommodate this unexpected situation struck Michael anew. Rebecca had put her own life on hold after the accident, moving into the lake house to ensure he didn't completely self-destruct. 5 years later, she was still making sacrifices on his behalf. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate. "For everything." She smiled slightly. "Go see Collins. I'll keep our guest entertained." Michael found Sarah sitting up in bed, looking marginally better than she had the night before. Dr. William Thompson, the Blackwood family physician for over 20 years, was adjusting her medication drip with practiced efficiency. The old doctor looked up as Michael entered, offering a slight nod of acknowledgement. "Good morning, Sarah," Michael said, taking a seat beside the bed. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," she replied, though the shadows beneath her eyes suggested a restless night. "Dr. Thompson says my heart rhythm is normal again." "Indeed," the older doctor confirmed. "She's responding well to the medication. However, she'll need consistent monitoring and possibly an adjustment to her heart guard settings in the coming weeks." Michael nodded. "Whatever she needs." Sarah watched this exchange with the intense focus he was beginning to recognize as her default state. A child accustomed to gleaning vital information from adult conversations that excluded her. "Mr. Blackwood needs to go out for a while, Sarah." Dr. Thompson continued, packing his stethoscope into his bag. "But I'll be checking on you throughout the day, and Ms. Rebecca will stay with you." Sarah's gaze shifted to Michael. "You're going to see my dad?" "Yes," Michael confirmed, impressed by her perceptiveness. "I want to make sure he's safe and talk to his doctors." "Victoria might be there," she warned, fingers twisting in the blanket. "I'll be careful," Michael assured her, "and I'm not going alone." This was true. Frank had arranged for 2 security personnel to accompany him to St. Mercy, with another 2 stationed at the hospital, since dawn, monitoring Collins's room from a discreet distance. "Will you bring him here when he's better?" Sarah asked, a fragile hope in her voice. The question caught Michael off guard. The temporary custody arrangement covered only Sarah, not her father. But looking at her expectant face, he couldn't bring himself to explain the legal complexities. "If that's what's best for both of you," he said carefully. "First, let's focus on making sure he's recovering." Sarah nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. She reached beneath her pillow and withdrew a folded piece of paper. "Can you give him this? I made it this morning." Michael accepted the drawing, 3 figures standing before a large house, snow falling around them. A tall man in blue, a smaller man with silver hair, and between them a little girl holding both their hands. The simple scene carried a weight of longing that tightened his throat. "I'll make sure he gets it," Michael promised, carefully folding the drawing and placing it in his jacket pocket. As he rose to leave, Sarah called after him, "Mr. Blackwood." He turned. "Yes." "Thank you for not being afraid of Victoria." The simple statement hit with unexpected force. How many adults in this child's life had looked away out of fear or convenience? How many had chosen the path of least resistance while she suffered? "Some things are worth being brave for, Sarah," he replied. "I'll be back soon." St. Mercy Hospital rose against the winter sky like a monolith of hope and despair, its modern glass facade reflecting the brilliant morning sunlight. Michael entered through the main doors, flanked discreetly by Frank Morris and another security operative whose name he hadn't caught. The hospital lobby bustled with the controlled chaos typical of urban medical centers, families waiting for news staff hurrying between departments, the underlying current of tension that accompanies illness and uncertainty. "Collins is in the ICU, 5th floor," Frank murmured. "Our people report no sign of the Reed woman, but the hospital has been alerted to deny her access if she appears." Michael nodded, stepping into an elevator. His reflection in the polished steel doors showed a man transformed from the corporate figure of yesterday. Silver hair, unstyled features sharpened by lack of sleep, eyes alive with purpose rather than the detached efficiency that had become his trademark. He barely recognized himself. The intensive care unit operated on its own rhythm, separate from the world outside. Hushed voices, the steady beeping of monitors, the gentle whoosh of ventilators, all combining in a symphony of life hanging in the balance. A nurse at the central station recognized him immediately, eyes widening slightly. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged. "Dr. Martinez is expecting you." She led them to a small consultation room, where a middle-aged man in surgical scrubs waited, dark circles beneath his eyes suggesting a long night on duty. He extended his hand. "Rafael Martinez, Chief of Neurosurgery." Thank you for coming, Mr. Blackwood. Your security team explained the situation. Michael shook his hand. How is Mr. Collins? Stable but critical. Dr. Martinez gestured to brain scans displayed on a light board. He suffered severe trauma in the accident, cerebral contusions, subdural hematoma. We've relieved the pressure on his brain, but he paused, choosing his words carefully. There's another issue. During our workup, we discovered a mass in advanced glioblastoma. Brain cancer, Michael translated. Yes. And given its location and size, I believe it predates the accident by several months, perhaps longer. Some of his symptoms, memory loss, confusion, were likely due to the tumor, not just the trauma. Michael processed this information with growing dread. Is it operable? Dr. Martinez's expression provided the answer before his words. No, the location makes it inoperable. Even with aggressive treatment, prognosis is typically measured in months. Does he know? He regained consciousness briefly this morning. I discussed the findings with him. The doctor's professional veneer cracked slightly. He was more concerned about his daughter than himself. May I see him? Briefly, he's sedated but lucid when awake. Dr. Martinez stood. There's something else you should know. When he learned about the tumor, he asked to speak with his attorney. He was quite insistent. The implication hung in the air between them, a dying man putting his affairs in order. Michael nodded his understanding and followed the doctor through the ICU, Frank remaining respectfully behind. David Collins occupied a private room at the end of the corridor, the rhythmic sounds of monitoring equipment marking each precious heartbeat. At first glance, he appeared younger than his 45 years, his face unlined, despite the trauma it had endured. Dark hair now matted against hospital pillows showed only traces of gray. Had circumstances been different, he might have been considered handsome. Michael approached the bed, slowly studying the man who had helped create the device that saved countless children after his own son couldn't be saved. There was something vaguely familiar about Collins, as if they had indeed met during those hazy days of grief when Michael had moved through the world like a ghost. Collins's eyes opened, startling blue against his pallid skin. For a moment he seemed disoriented. Then recognition dawned. Blackwood, he whispered, voice rough from the ventilator recently removed. You came. The simple statement confirmed Michael's suspicion they had met before, however briefly. He moved closer to the bed. Mr. Collins, I'm sorry about your accident. A ghost of a smile touched Collins's lips. Not an accident. We both know that. Michael nodded, seeing no benefit in pretense. Your daughter is safe. She's staying at my home under medical supervision. Relief flooded Collins's features, temporarily erasing the marks of pain and illness. Sarah, is she all right? She's recovering. The medication interruption was serious but caught in time. Thanks to you. Collins's gaze was surprisingly intense for a man so gravely injured. Of all the people who could have found her that night, I don't believe it was coincidence, Michael said quietly. Neither do I. Collins attempted to shift position, wincing with the effort. We worked together, 7 years ago, the Heart Guard project. I've been told. I'm afraid I don't remember clearly. You wouldn't. It was right after you lost your family. Collins's directness was startling but not unkind. You were elsewhere, mentally, but you approved my research grant, funded the prototype that eventually saved Sarah's life. Michael felt an odd sensation, pieces of a puzzle shifting into alignment. Why did you leave Blackwood Medical? Your contributions were significant. Collins's expression darkened. I had to disappear, to protect Sarah and her mother. He paused, gathering strength. Kathleen discovered something dangerous. After she died, I took Sarah and started over with a new life. What did she discover? Before Collins could answer, his monitor began chiming, blood pressure spiking dangerously. Dr. Martinez rushed in, followed by a nurse. You need to step out, the doctor ordered, already adjusting medication. Michael retreated to the hallway, mind racing. Whatever Collins had been about to reveal had clearly agitated him significantly. Kathleen, Sarah's mother, had discovered something dangerous enough to warrant disappearing. Something connected to Blackwood Medical. The implications were disturbing on multiple levels. Frank approached, expression grave. Sir, we've got a situation. Hospital security cameras show Victoria Reed entering the building 10 minutes ago. Different hair color, but facial recognition confirmed it's her. Michael's pulse quickened. Where is she now? That's the problem. She disappeared between cameras. Security is searching, but a commotion from Collins's room interrupted him. Alarms blaring, medical staff rushing in. Michael stepped forward instinctively, but Frank held him back. Let them work, sir. Agonizing minutes passed as the medical team fought to stabilize Collins. When Dr. Martinez finally emerged, his expression told the story before words could. He's had a massive cerebral hemorrhage, the neurosurgeon explained. We've stabilized him temporarily, but the prognosis is grave. Hours, maybe days at most. Was this expected, given his injuries? Martinez hesitated. Not exactly. His medications were precisely calibrated to prevent this kind of event. The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. Someone might have tampered with Collins's treatment. I need to see him again, Michael insisted, while he's still conscious. 5 minutes, Martinez agreed reluctantly. But any sign of distress and you're out. Collins looked markedly worse when Michael re-entered the room. His skin had taken on an ashen quality, and his breathing was labored despite the oxygen mask now covering his face. But his eyes remained alert, finding Michael immediately. She's here, Collins whispered as Michael leaned close. I saw her. Security is searching, Michael assured him. They won't let her near you again. Collins shook his head weakly. Too late for me. The cancer would have taken me anyway. His hand moved toward Michael's fingers, trembling with the effort. Sarah is what matters now. I'll protect her, Michael promised. But David, I need to understand what's happening. What did Kathleen discover? Why is Victoria so determined to harm both of you? Collins's eyes closed briefly, gathering strength. Not just about money, about control. The original HeartGuard design had a back door. Michael felt cold dread pooling in his stomach. A back door, remote access capability, military applications. Collins's voice was fading. Kathleen found the code. They killed her for it. They, who is they? But Collins was struggling now, each word costing precious energy. Sarah's medical records. The truth is there. Kathleen hid it. His hand clutched Michael's with surprising strength. Promise me. Keep her safe. I promise, Michael said without hesitation. But David, the custody is temporary. Just 48 hours. A ghost of a smile touched Collins's lips. Check my will. Updated this morning. His breathing grew more labored. She has your eyes, you know. Always thought that was strange. Before Michael could question this cryptic statement, Collins's eyes drifted closed monitors, indicating he had slipped back into unconsciousness. A nurse entered silently, signaling that his time was up. In the corridor, Michael found Frank in hushed conversation with a distinguished older man clutching a leather portfolio. Mr. Blackwood, Frank said, this is Harold Weinstein, Mr. Collins's attorney. He was just admitted to see his client, but found him unresponsive. The attorney extended his hand. Mr. Blackwood, David spoke highly of you this morning when he called to update his will. Michael shook the offered hand, automatically, mind still processing Collins's revelations. He's unconscious, but stable for now. The doctors aren't optimistic about recovery. Weinstein nodded sadly. David was aware of his prognosis. It's why he insisted on finalizing his affairs immediately. He patted the portfolio, including guardianship arrangements for Sarah. Guardianship, Michael echoed. He mentioned something about his will. Yes, given the circumstances with Victoria Reed, whom he now believes attempted to murder him, David has named you as Sarah's legal guardian in the event of his death. Weinstein's tone was matter-of-fact, as if such arrangements were commonplace. The paperwork is prepared for your signature should you accept. Frank's carefully neutral expression couldn't completely hide his surprise. Michael himself felt momentarily speechless. The implications were enormous, not a temporary arrangement, but a permanent responsibility for a child he barely knew. This is unexpected, he managed finally. Perhaps. Weinstein's gaze was steady. Though David seemed certain you would accept. He mentioned something about a debt between you, though he didn't elaborate. A debt. The word echoed in Michael's mind alongside Collins's cryptic final comment about Sarah's eyes. Before he could formulate a response, Frank's phone buzzed. Sir, his security chief interrupted after checking the message. Hospital security has located Victoria Reed. She's in the pharmacy department, but they've lost visual again. The immediate threat took precedence over longer-term questions. Mr. Weinstein, we need to continue this conversation elsewhere. This hospital isn't secure. The attorney nodded his understanding. I'll accompany you to your office. The paperwork requires immediate attention given David's condition. As they moved toward the elevator, Michael's mind raced with implications. Collins had entrusted his daughter to him, a man he barely knew. Or did they know each other better than Michael remembered? The references to debt, to Sarah's eyes, to Kathleen all suggested connections deeper than professional acquaintance. And beneath it all, the disturbing revelation about the HeartGuard's hidden functionality. Military applications. Remote access capability. If true, the device currently keeping Sarah alive could potentially be controlled by someone with the right access codes. Someone who might wish her harm. The elevator doors opened onto the main lobby, momentarily crowded with visitors navigating the morning shift change. Frank moved slightly ahead, creating a path through the throng, Weinstein following closely behind. Michael brought up the rear, scanning the crowd automatically for threats. A flash of copper hair caught his attention, a woman turning away quickly, phone pressed to her ear. The hair color was different, but the profile was unmistakable. "Frank," Michael called sharply. 3 o'clock copper hair. His security chief pivoted smoothly, already reaching beneath his jacket. But the woman had vanished into the crowd, leaving only the lingering impression of a smile that knew too much. "Get the car," Michael ordered. "We need to leave. Now." The drive back to the Blackwood estate proceeded in tense silence, Weinstein occasionally glancing at the security vehicle following closely behind. The attorney seemed unperturbed by the evident danger, his professional demeanor never wavering. David anticipated Victoria might make an attempt on his life, Weinstein commented as they turned onto the private road leading to the lake house. "Hence the urgency of our meeting this morning." Michael studied the older man. "How long have you represented Collins?" "Nearly 7 years, since shortly after he left Blackwood Medical." "And in that time, did he ever mention why he left so abruptly, or what his wife might have discovered there?" Weinstein's expression remained carefully neutral. "Attorney-client privilege prevents me from discussing most of our conversations, Mr. Blackwood. However, I can tell you that David was deeply concerned about certain aspects of the HeartGuard technology, concerns that intensified after Kathleen's death. He mentioned a backdoor in the design. Military applications." Something flickered across Weinstein's face, recognition, perhaps concern. "I'm not at liberty to confirm or deny specific details. What I can say is that the guardianship papers include provisions for Sarah's ongoing medical care that specifically prohibit certain procedures without multiple medical opinions." The implication was clear. Collins had structured legal protections around his daughter's medical treatment, particularly regarding the HeartGuard device. "Mr. Weinstein, I need to understand what I'm potentially agreeing to," Michael said as the car approached the security gates. "Not just legal guardianship, but the larger situation Sarah is involved in." The attorney nodded slowly. "A fair request. I have materials David instructed me to share with you upon his incapacitation, medical records, research notes, correspondence with Kathleen. They should provide context." "And Victoria Reed, what do you know about her?" "Only that she appeared in David's life approximately 2 years ago, shortly after he received his initial diagnosis. Their courtship was brief, the marriage even more so." Weinstein's voice hardened slightly. "I advised against it, but David was vulnerable. Facing mortality often clouds judgment." The car pulled into the circular driveway, coming to a stop before the imposing entrance of the Blackwood residence. Frank opened Michael's door, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings despite the property's extensive security. "Sir, Ms. Rebecca asked that you join her in the East Wing immediately upon arrival." Something in Frank's tone triggered alarm. "Sarah?" "Stable, but there's been a development." Michael turned to Weinstein. "My assistant will show you to my office. I need to check on Sarah first." "Of course," the attorney agreed. "The documents can wait a few moments longer." Michael found Rebecca in Sarah's suite, seated beside the bed, where the child appeared to be sleeping peacefully. His sister's expression as she rose to meet him was troubled. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Rebecca led him to the adjacent sitting room, closing the door partially to avoid disturbing Sarah. Her morning medication triggered a severe reaction, racing heart, elevated blood pressure. Dr. Thompson managed to stabilize her, but he's concerned. What kind of reaction? He believes someone may have tampered with her regular medications before she came here. Rebecca's voice was tightly controlled, possibly introducing a compound designed to interact dangerously with the standard protocol for her condition. The implications were chilling. Victoria hadn't simply withheld Sarah's medication. She had actively sabotaged it to ensure that even if Sarah received treatment elsewhere, it might kill her. Thompson is running tests now, Rebecca continued. He's modified her regimen completely as a precaution. Michael moved to the doorway, watching Sarah's sleeping form. The vulnerability of childhood was never more apparent than in sleep, all defenses down, all fears temporarily suspended. The thought that someone had deliberately endangered this child filled him with cold fury. "Did you learn anything at the hospital?" Rebecca asked. "Too much, perhaps." Michael briefly recounted his conversation with Collins, the revelation about the HeartGuard's hidden functionality, the attorney waiting with guardianship papers. Collins believes Victoria's interest goes beyond money. There's something about the original HeartGuard design that people are willing to kill for. Rebecca's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "And Sarah has one of those devices in her chest." "First generation, yes." Michael ran a hand through his silver hair. "Collins said Kathleen, Sarah's mother, discovered something in the code, something dangerous enough to get her killed." "Do you believe him?" Michael considered the question carefully. "I believe he believes it. Whether there's truth to it," he sighed, our corporate archives would contain the original design specifications. "I need to review them." "And the guardianship offer?" Rebecca's gaze was penetrating. "Are you considering it?" Before Michael could answer, a small voice interrupted from the bedroom. "Mr. Blackwood, is that you?" Sarah was awake, pushing herself up against the pillows, hair tousled from sleep. Michael moved to her bedside, taking the chair Rebecca had vacated. "I'm here," he assured her. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." She studied his face with that unsettling intensity. "Did you see my dad?" Michael hesitated, weighing how much truth this child could bear. "Yes, he's very sick, Sarah. The doctors are doing everything they can." Her expression didn't change, but her small hands sought, his fingers cold despite the room's warmth. "Victoria got to him, didn't she?" The directness of the question, the absence of childish denial, struck Michael anew. This was a child who had learned early that adults often concealed painful truths. "Your father had an episode while I was there," he said carefully. "The doctors are investigating whether someone interfered with his treatment." Sarah nodded slightly, as if this confirmed something she already knew. "She won't stop until we're both dead." The matter-of-fact way she stated this, without tears or drama, was more heartbreaking than any outburst could have been. "Sarah, listen to me." Michael leaned closer, ensuring he had her full attention. "I will not let that happen. Do you understand Victoria cannot reach you here, and we have security watching over your father?" "But why does she want to hurt us?" Sarah's voice finally betrayed her youth, a child's plaintive question about adult cruelty. "What did we do wrong?" "Nothing," Michael said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Sometimes people do terrible things because they want something that isn't theirs." "Like what?" Michael considered how to explain complex motives of greed and power to a 7-year-old. "Your father helped create something very important, the device that helps your heart. Victoria may want control of that invention." Sarah's hand moved to her chest, feeling the outline of the heart guard beneath her skin. "Dad said it was special, that it saved lots of kids like me." It did. Michael felt a surge of pride in the technology that had become his life's work after James's death. Thousands of children are alive today because of it. Could Victoria make it stop working? The question was asked in a small voice, but with the directness he'd come to expect from her. The possibility had been haunting Michael since Collins mentioned the back door. "No," he said, hoping it wasn't a lie. "Your device is monitored by the best doctors. Any problem would be detected immediately." Sarah seemed to accept this explanation, though her expression remained solemn. "When can I see my dad?" Another difficult question. "He's not well enough for visitors yet, but he sent something for you." Michael reached into his pocket, removing a small velvet pouch. "The nurse found this among his personal effects. He asked that it be given to you." Sarah opened the pouch, tipping a delicate silver locket into her palm. Her eyes widened in recognition. Mom's necklace. Dad kept it in his special box. She fumbled with the clasp, finally managing to open it. Inside was a tiny photograph. A beautiful woman with Sarah's gray eyes and a warm smile holding an infant. That's me and Mom, Sarah explained, voice soft with reverence. Before she got sick. Michael studied the photograph. The woman Kathleen looked vaguely familiar, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her. Perhaps among the research staff at Blackwood Medical. Your father also asked his attorney to speak with me, Michael continued, about making sure you're taken care of no matter what happens. Sarah looked up from the locket. Does that mean I can stay here even after Dad gets better? The hope in her voice made Michael's chest tighten. Would you want that? She nodded without hesitation. It's safe here, and Miss Rebecca makes real hot chocolate. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. And you're not afraid of Victoria. Such simple criteria for acceptance, safety, small kindnesses, protection. Michael marveled at how little it took to win this child's trust after all she had endured. Then we'll make it happen, he promised, though the legal complexities remained daunting. For as long as necessary. Sarah's smile grew slightly, illuminating her face despite the pallor of illness. She returned to studying the locket, fingers tracing the contours of her mother's face with reverent attention. Michael stood, recognizing she needed time to process this connection to her past. Rest now. Rebecca will stay with you while I meet with your father's attorney. At the door he paused, looking back at this child who had inexplicably become the center of his world in less than 24 hours. She had returned her attention to the locket, whispering something to the tiny photograph that he couldn't quite hear. In the corridor, Rebecca waited, concern etched in her features. She's stronger than she appears, Michael observed quietly. Most survivors are, his sister replied, and the question is, are you prepared for what this means? Legal guardianship isn't temporary, Michael. It's parenthood. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Parenthood, a role he had embraced once with joy, then lost in unspeakable tragedy. The thought of attempting it again with a child already wounded by life was terrifying. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I can't abandon her now. Rebecca touched his arm lightly. Then you've already made your decision. Perhaps he had. The realization settled over him, not with the weight of obligation he had expected, but with something that felt strangely like purpose. In his office, Harold Weinstein waited patiently, the guardianship papers arrayed on the desk in precise order. The attorney looked up as Michael entered, studying his expression with professional detachment. You've spoken with Sarah, Weinstein observed. Yes. Michael took his seat behind the desk. Before we discuss guardianship, I need to see those materials you mentioned, Collins's research correspondence with Kathleen medical records. Weinstein nodded, reaching into his briefcase. David anticipated this request. He withdrew a sealed envelope, placing it carefully on the desk. This contains access information for a secured cloud server where all documentation is stored. David was meticulous about maintaining records. Michael accepted the envelope, turning it over in his hands. Collins mentioned a back door in the HeartGuard design, military applications. Is there truth to this? Weinstein's expression remained carefully neutral. The documentation will address your questions more thoroughly than I can. What I will say is that David and Kathleen were deeply concerned about unauthorized modifications to the original design. Modifications I was unaware of. So it would appear. The attorney adjusted his glasses. Now, regarding the guardianship papers, a sharp knock interrupted them. Frank entered without waiting for acknowledgement, his expression grim. Sir, we have a situation. Victoria Reed was just captured on camera approaching the east perimeter fence. Michael stood immediately. Security response. Teams are converging on the location now, but, sir, Frank hesitated. She's not alone. The words hung in the air like suspended glass, sharp with implications. Victoria Reed was not alone. Michael moved toward the security monitors in the corner of his office, Weinstein forgotten momentarily. Show me, he ordered. Frank activated the display, revealing multiple camera angles of the Blackwood Estate's eastern perimeter. The security footage was crystal clear, despite the bright winter sunlight reflecting off the snow. Victoria Reed hair, now a copper red instead of the blonde Michael had seen in the hospital, stood near the perimeter fence accompanied by two men in dark winter gear. One carried what appeared to be specialized electronic equipment. "They're probing for weaknesses in the security system," Frank explained. Attempting to bypass the sensor grid, Michael studied Victoria's face on the monitor. In daylight, without the frantic energy of their alley confrontation, he could see the cold calculation in her eyes. This was not a woman acting on impulse, but one executing a carefully considered plan. "Do they know they've been detected?" "Not yet. I've implemented silent protocol. Teams are converging from blind positions." Michael nodded his approval. "Keep them under surveillance. I want them apprehended, but carefully. They may have valuable information." Frank hesitated. "Sir, given the situation, perhaps we should move Sarah to the panic room." The suggestion was sound. The Blackwood Estates panic room was a fortress within a fortress, bulletproof with independent power communications and medical equipment. It had been installed after Elizabeth and James died, when Michael's paranoia about losing what remained of his family had driven him to extreme precautions. "Agreed. But quietly, I don't want to frighten her unnecessarily." Michael turned to Weinstein, who had observed the exchange with remarkable composure. "Mr. Weinstein, I apologize for the interruption. You're welcome to remain here until the situation is resolved." The attorney stood gathering his papers with deliberate calm. "Actually, Mr. Blackwood, I believe I should accompany you. The guardianship papers require immediate signature, especially given these developments." Something in Weinstein's tone, a subtle urgency that hadn't been present before, caught Michael's attention. The attorney's gaze flicked briefly to the security monitors, then back to Michael's face. "Frank, escort Mr. Weinstein to my private study and remain with him," Michael instructed. "I'll join you after Sarah is secure." Frank nodded, clearly understanding the unspoken order to keep the attorney under observation. As they exited, Michael moved swiftly through the house toward the East Wing, mind racing. Victoria's appearance at the perimeter wasn't coincidental. She had tracked them from the hospital somehow. The specialized equipment suggested this was no impulsive act of revenge, but something more calculated. And Collins's cryptic warnings about the Heart Guard's backdoor functionality loomed larger with each passing moment. Rebecca met him in the corridor outside, Sarah's sweet expression tense. "Security called. Is it her?" "Yes, with accomplices." Michael kept his voice low. "We need to move Sarah to the panic room." His sister nodded immediately, understanding the gravity of the situation. "She's having lunch. I can tell her it's a tour of the house." "Good. Keep it casual." Michael squeezed her shoulder briefly. "I'll join you there shortly." As Rebecca returned to Sarah, Michael's phone vibrated with an incoming message from Frank. "Perimeter breach detected. Eastgate Electronics compromised. Security teams engaging." The situation was escalating faster than anticipated. Michael quickly typed a response. "Implement full lockdown. Authorization, Blackwood Alpha 1. The moment he pressed send, subtle changes rippled through the house, the faint click of reinforced locks, engaging security shutters descending over vulnerable windows, surveillance systems shifting to high alert protocols. The Blackwood estate was transforming into the fortress it had been designed to be, though few visitors ever realized the defensive capabilities hidden beneath its elegant exterior. Michael entered Sarah's suite to find her seated at a small table, Rebecca helping her with a bowl of soup. The child looked up immediately, sensing something had changed. "What's happening?" she asked, that preternatural perception cutting through adult pretenses. Michael made a split-second decision. Sarah had endured too many lies from adults claiming to protect her. "Victoria has been spotted near the property," he said, keeping his voice calm but honest. "As a precaution, we're going to move to a special room where no one can reach us." Fear flickered across Sarah's face, quickly replaced by resignation that no child her age should possess. "She found us." "She found the property," Michael corrected gently. "But our security team is already responding, and the house has special protections." Rebecca helped Sarah from her chair, gathering the child's medications and the silver locket she hadn't parted with since receiving it. "Think of it as an adventure, sweetheart. The safe room is quite impressive." Sarah allowed herself to be guided into the corridor, but her small hands sought Michael's fingers, cold with anxiety. "Will she hurt other people to get to me?" The question, so adult in its concern for others, tightened Michael's chest. "Everyone here is trained to handle situations like this. Their job is to keep all of us safe. They move through the house with practiced efficiency, Rebecca leading the way to a seemingly ordinary wood-paneled wall in the central library. At her touch, a hidden door revealed itself, opening onto a short corridor that sloped gently downward. This way, she encouraged Sarah, whose eyes had widened at the revelation. The panic room occupied a substantial space beneath the main house, designed not as a claustrophobic box, but as a comfortable apartment that could sustain its occupants for days if necessary. Medical equipment duplicating what Sarah currently required had already been prepared along one wall. Monitors displayed security feeds from throughout the property, currently showing security personnel converging on the east perimeter. Wow, Sarah breathed, momentarily distracted from her fear. It's like a secret base. Exactly, Rebecca agreed, guiding her to a comfortable seating area. And completely secure. No one can enter without authorization. Michael moved to the communication console, establishing a direct link to Frank. Status report. His security chief's voice came through with perfect clarity. 3 intruders engaged at the east perimeter, Victoria Reed and 2 unidentified males. They're well-equipped military-grade electronics, possibly armed. Casualties? Negative. We've contained them in Sector 7. Police have been notified but are delayed due to an accident on the Lake Road. In Weinstein, a slight hesitation. Secure in your studies, sir, but he's asking specifically for Sarah. Says he has something for her from her father. Seems unusually insistent. Michael frowned. Something about the attorney's behavior had been nagging at him since the security alert began, the convenient timing of his arrival, his composure in the face of danger, his urgency about the guardianship papers. Keep him there. I'll deal with him personally once the perimeter situation is resolved. Understood. Wait, Frank's voice sharpened. Sir, we have a new development. The intruders have deployed some kind of electronic pulse device. Systems in Sector 7 are failing. East Wing cameras offline. Michael moved to the security monitors, watching as several screens flickered and went dark. Whatever equipment Victoria and her accomplices had brought, it was sophisticated enough to temporarily disable portions of the Blackwood security system, a system that had cost millions and utilized proprietary technology. Fall back to secondary positions, Michael ordered. Maintain visual contact, but do not engage directly. These aren't ordinary intruders. Rebecca joined him at the console, keeping her voice low to avoid alarming Sarah. What are they after, Michael? This isn't just about custody of a child anymore. No, he agreed grimly. Collins said the original Heart Guard had some kind of backdoor remote access capability for military applications. I think Victoria and whoever she's working with want that access. But why the first-generation Heart Guards were replaced years ago with newer models? Not all of them. Michael glanced meaningfully towards Sarah, who was examining the locket with intense focus. And if Collins was right about Kathleen hiding information in Sarah's medical records, Rebecca's expression shifted as understanding dawned. They don't just want Sarah out of the way. They want what she carries, both the device and whatever information might be hidden in her records. Michael nodded. We need to access those records before they do. Collins gave Weinstein access credentials. He reached into his pocket, retrieving the sealed envelope the attorney had provided. I was going to review them later, but now, he tore open the envelope, finding a small USB drive and a handwritten note, access code Kathleen Porter 2016. The surname struck a chord in Michael's memory. Porter. Kathleen Porter. A name from Blackwood Medical's past, though he couldn't immediately place it. Rebecca took the USB drive to a secure terminal while Michael returned to monitoring the security situation. 3 more cameras had gone dark, indicating the intruders were advancing methodically toward the main house. Michael. Rebecca's voice was strange tight with some unidentifiable emotion. You need to see this. He joined her at the terminal where she had accessed the contents of the USB drive. On screen was a personnel file from Blackwood Medical dated 7 years ago. Kathleen Porter, research scientist, biomedical engineering division. The photograph showed a beautiful woman in her early 30s, the same woman from Sarah's locket. But it was the biographical details that froze Michael in place. Prior relationship disclosure. Kathleen Porter acknowledges a previous romantic relationship with Michael Blackwood, CEO from 2014 to 2016, terminated prior to her employment with Blackwood Medical. Both parties have confirmed This relationship will not impact professional responsibilities. I knew her, Michael whispered, memories suddenly flooding back from the period before he met Elizabeth. Kathleen Porter, brilliant, passionate, intensely private. They had been together nearly 2 years before amicably separating when their career paths diverged. She had moved abroad for an advanced research position, and they had lost touch. Or so he had believed. Rebecca scrolled to another document, a private medical record dated approximately 8 years ago. A paternity test comparing genetic markers between an unnamed male subject and a female infant identified only as baby Porter. Probability of paternity 99. Dear sent, Michael, Rebecca's voice was barely audible. I think Sarah is your daughter. The words seemed to hang in the air, impossible, and yet explaining so much. Collins's cryptic comments about Sarah's eyes, his insistence that Michael take guardianship, the strange sense of connection Michael had felt from their first encounter. He turned slowly, looking across the room at the child who sat quietly examining her mother's locket. Sarah, his daughter, a child he never knew existed. How is this possible? He asked, voice rough with emotion. Kathleen never told me she was pregnant. Rebecca continued scanning the documents. According to these notes, she discovered that she was pregnant after accepting a research position overseas. She tried to contact you, but she hesitated. This was during your difficult period, Michael. After your parents died, when you were unreachable to most people. Michael remembered that dark time all too well. Grief-stricken, after losing both parents in a plane crash, he had retreated into work, shutting out personal connections, screening all communications through assistants. It was entirely possible Kathleen's messages had never reached him. There's more, Rebecca continued, voice growing urgent. Kathleen returned to the States after Sarah was born. She took a position with Blackwood Medical specifically to work on the HeartGuard project when Sarah was diagnosed with a congenital heart condition. She came back because she needed the device for her daughter, Michael realized. For our daughter. Yes, but according to these notes, she discovered something during the development process, unauthorized modifications to the original design, adding remote access capabilities that weren't in the specifications you approved. Michael felt cold fury building as pieces aligned in his mind. Someone within Blackwood was weaponizing medical technology, and when Kathleen discovered it, they silenced her. Rebecca's voice was grim. These records include a private autopsy report contradicting the official cause of death. Kathleen didn't die from natural causes. She was poisoned with a compound designed to mimic heart failure. The implications were staggering. Not only had Michael unknowingly had a daughter all these years, but her mother had been murdered for discovering corruption within his own company. And now those same forces were converging on his home, determined to eliminate the last links to their conspiracy, Sarah and the evidence Kathleen had hidden. A small voice interrupted their stunned silence. Is something wrong, how? Sarah had approached without their noticing, gray eyes so like his own, studying them with that unsettling perceptiveness. Michael exchanged a glance with Rebecca, a silent question passing between them. How much should they reveal to this child who had already endured so much? Before either could respond, an alarm sounded harsh and insistent. One of the security monitors flashed red. Breach detected, main house. Victoria and her accomplices had penetrated the mansion's outer defenses. Frankly, Michael called into the communication console. Report. Static answered him. The communication system had been compromised. Secondary comms, Rebecca suggested, moving to another terminal. But Michael's attention was caught by Sarah, who had gone pale at the alarm sound. They're coming for me, she whispered, voice tight with fear. Like they came for Mom. The simple statement and the knowledge it revealed stunned Michael. You know about your mother, about what happened to her. Sarah nodded slowly. Dad told me before he got sick that Mom was brave and found bad people doing bad things, that she hid evidence where only the right person would find it. Evidence? Michael knelt to her level. Sarah, this is very important. Did your father tell you where that evidence might be? She nodded again, fingers closing around the silver locket. In here, and in me. With trembling fingers, she worked the clasp of the locket, opening it to reveal the tiny photograph. But instead of removing the image as Michael expected, she carefully pried at the metal backing behind it. A small memory chip fell into her palm. Mom put this inside before she died. Dad said it has all the bad things people did. The proof. She looked up at Michael, her gaze unflinching, despite her evident fear. And my heart thing has the other part. The access codes are in my medical ID. The child's matter-of-fact explanation of espionage tactics would have been unbelievable if not for the evidence already uncovered. Kathleen had hidden her discoveries in plain sight, part in the locket she knew would be preserved as a memento, part encoded in her daughter's medical identification that would remain with her throughout any treatment. Michael accepted the memory chip, handling it with the care its importance warranted. Sarah, did your father tell you who these bad people were, who hurt your mother? Sarah's gaze dropped. He said it was people who worked for you, but that you didn't know, that you would have stopped it if you knew. The simple faith in that statement, that a child who had never met him believed in his fundamental decency, struck Michael with physical force. Another alarm sounded more urgent than the first. The security monitors showed multiple breaches throughout the house, systematic and coordinated. Whoever Victoria was working with, they had resources and training beyond ordinary criminals. Rebecca had established communication with a secondary security team positioned on the property's western edge. Reinforcements are 15 minutes out, she reported, but the intruders will reach the library access within 5. Can they breach the panic room? Sarah asked, revealing yet again a practical understanding of danger beyond her years. No, Michael assured her, though his certainty had diminished with each revelation about the sophistication of their opponents. But we're not going to wait here to find out. He moved to a concealed panel in the far wall, pressing his palm against a biometric scanner. The panel slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel. Emergency exit, he explained. It leads to the boathouse on the lake. Rebecca was already gathering essential supplies, Sarah's medications, warm clothing, the security access cards that would grant them passage through the estate's outermost perimeters. The boat is fueled and ready, she confirmed. Standard protocol. Michael knelt before Sarah again, needing her to understand. We're going to leave together, but I need you to be very brave. Can you do that? She nodded, shoulders straightening despite the fear evident in her eyes. I'm good at being brave. Dad taught me. Your father is a remarkable man. Michael hesitated, then added softly, Sarah, there is something important. I need to tell you something I just discovered. Rebecca shot him a warning glance, perhaps questioning the timing of such a revelation, but Michael proceeded. Sarah deserved truth, not more adult evasions. Your mother Kathleen and I knew each other before you were born. He kept his voice gentle but direct. According to the records your father preserved, I'm your biological father. Sarah's expression remained perfectly still, absorbing this information with the same intensity she approached everything. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted in her gaze, not surprise but recognition. Dad said my real father was a good man who didn't know about me. Her voice was small but steady. That's why he sent me to you when Victoria came. The simple acceptance, without drama or questioning, humbled Michael. This child, who had experienced so many adult betrayals, still maintained the capacity for trust. We have a lot to talk about, he promised, but right now we need to go. The tunnel was narrow but well-lit, concrete walls giving way to natural stone as they descended beneath the property. Michael led the way, Sarah between him and Rebecca, their footsteps echoing softly in the confined space. The passage sloped gently downward for several hundred yards before curving toward the lake. How much farther? Sarah asked, voice tight with the strain of maintaining her composure. Almost there, Michael assured her. The boathouse is just ahead. As if summoned by his words, a faint light appeared at the tunnel's end, soft illumination from emergency fixtures in the boathouse dock. They emerged into a large chamber where a sleek speedboat waited at a private dock, the waters of Lake Michigan lapping gently against its hull. Rebecca moved quickly to prepare the vessel while Michael helped Sarah aboard, settling her in a sheltered cabin area protected from the winter wind. The boat was specially designed for rapid evacuation. Powerful engines, reinforced hull, and enough range to reach any port on the lake's vast shoreline. Where are we going? Sarah asked as Rebecca started the engines, their purr surprisingly quiet for their considerable power. Somewhere safe, Michael replied, securing her life vest. A place Victoria doesn't know about. In truth, their destination was a private compound on the Michigan side of the lake, a property not publicly connected to the Blackwood name. It had been Elizabeth's family retreat, preserved after her death as a memorial. Now it would serve as sanctuary. Rebecca released the moorings, guiding the boat away from the dock, with practiced efficiency. As they emerged from the boathouse onto the open lake, Michael felt momentary relief they had escaped the immediate threat, putting valuable distance between Sarah and those who sought to harm her. That relief was shattered by the staccato sound of gunfire from the shoreline. Bullets struck the water around them, too close for coincidence. Someone had anticipated their escape route. "Down," Michael ordered, covering Sarah with his body as Rebecca accelerated the boat, zigzagging to present a more difficult target. Through the cabin window, Michael glimpsed figures on the Blackwood Estate's private beach, dark shapes against the snow, at least one wielding what appeared to be a high-powered rifle. Victoria Reed stood among them, copper hair bright against the winter landscape, watching their departure with cold calculation. The boat rapidly gained distance, its superior speed quickly putting them beyond effective shooting range. As the shoreline receded, Michael cautiously straightened, checking Sarah for injuries. "Are you all right?" he asked, heart hammering with adrenaline and fear. She nodded, pale but composed. They knew about the tunnel. The observation was astute and troubling. The emergency exit was known to only a handful of people, its family and highest-level security personnel. Its existence implied inside information. "Someone told them," Michael agreed grimly. "Someone who knew the house." Rebecca steered them further into the lake, maintaining top speed. "Weinstein," she suggested. "The timing of his arrival was too convenient." Michael's thoughts raced, recalibrating their situation based on this new understanding. If Weinstein was compromised, then everything he had provided, including the USB drive, might be suspect. Yet the information it contained explained too much, aligned too perfectly with other evidence to be fabrication. Unless that was precisely the point, truth mixed with deception, designed to manipulate his actions in predictable ways. "We need to verify everything," he decided. "Independently confirm Collins's condition, authenticate the documents, determine who's really behind Victoria Reed." Sarah watched this exchange with solemn attention, unconsciously clutching her mother's locket. "The chip has Mom's special code on it," she offered. "Dad said only Mom's old computer could read it." "Do you know where that computer is?" Michael asked gently. "In our cabin, the one where we hide sometimes." Sarah's expression clouded. "But Victoria knows about it. That's where she found us before." Another piece of the puzzle. Collins had maintained a safe house, a cabin where he took Sarah when he felt threatened, a location Victoria had eventually discovered. "Rebecca," Michael called toward the helm. "Change of plans. We need to find this cabin before Victoria's people do." His sister nodded, adjusting their course slightly without questioning his decision. Their sibling shorthand, developed over decades and honed during the darkest days following his family's accident, allowed for immediate understanding. "Where is this cabin, Sarah?" Michael asked, retrieving a map from the boat's navigation system. "In the woods near Silver Lake," she replied. "Dad called it the Eagle's Nest. It has a big tree with a carving shaped like an eagle." Michael consulted the map, identifying the general area, a remote woodland region about 40 miles from Chicago, dotted with small vacation properties and hunting cabins. Finding a specific cabin without an address would be challenging, but not impossible. As Rebecca maintained their course across the vast lake, Michael used the boat's secure communication system to contact Frank. The signal was weak, but sufficient. "Sir," his security chief's voice crackled through the speaker. "Status, secure with the package," Michael replied, using their prearranged code. "The house, compromised but contained. Police arrived, intruders fled. No casualties. Weinstein is missing." Confirmation of their suspicions. "We're pursuing alternate verification. Maintain distance protection, but do not engage. Possible friendly forces compromised." "Understood." Frank hesitated. "Sir, there's something else. Collins's condition has deteriorated. Hospital reports imminent organ failure. Hours at most." The news struck Michael with unexpected force. Despite barely knowing the man, Collins had protected his daughter, their daughter for years, keeping her safe from forces Michael himself had unwittingly unleashed through his company. "Acknowledged," he managed, glancing at Sarah to ensure she hadn't overheard. "Implement sanctuary protocol, authorization Blackwood Delta 6. "Confirmed," Frank replied, recognizing the instruction to activate their most secure contingency plan, one that would effectively erase their digital footprint, rerouting communications, financial transactions, and surveillance to obscured channels. The communication ended, leaving Michael with the weight of decisions that would shape not only his future, but Sarah's. The child who sat across from him, his daughter, watched with those perceptive gray eyes, somehow understanding the gravity of the moment without knowing its details. "He's dying, isn't he?" she asked quietly. "My dad." Michael considered lying, offering reassurance that might temporarily ease her pain. But he had promised her truth. "Yes," he answered gently. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time left." Sarah absorbed this with remarkable composure, though her small hands trembled slightly. "He knew it was coming. That's why he made me memorize everything about the chip, about Mom's computer, about you." Her voice caught. "He said when I found you, I wouldn't be alone anymore." Michael moved to sit beside her, carefully putting an arm around her shoulders. To his surprise, she leaned into him, accepting the comfort he offered. "Your father was right," he said softly. "You're not alone, Sarah, and you never will be again." They remained that way as the boat sped across the vast waters of Lake Michigan, a man and a child connected by blood and circumstance, each grieving losses while facing an uncertain future together. Rebecca maintained a respectful silence from the helm, allowing them this moment of quiet connection amidst the chaos that had engulfed their lives. The journey continued for nearly an hour, the shoreline eventually reappearing as they approached the Michigan side of the lake. Rebecca guided them to a small private marina where a vehicle awaited another component of the Blackwood evacuation protocol. As they docked, Michael helped Sarah from the boat, noticing how the activity had drained her limited strength. Despite her remarkable resilience, she remained a child with a serious medical condition, one exacerbated by recent stress and disrupted treatment. "How are you feeling?" he asked, noting the pallor beneath her fair skin. "Tired," she admitted, "and my chest hurts a little." Rebecca immediately retrieved the medical kit, checking Sarah's pulse and blood pressure with practiced efficiency. "Her heart rate is elevated," she reported. "She needs rest and her medication." Michael made a swift decision. "We'll stop at the house first. Get her stabilized before proceeding to the cabin." The Blackwood family retreat stood in a secluded woodland, clearing its rustic exterior, belying the comfortable amenities within. Unlike Michael's modernist main residence, this house embraced traditional warm stone fireplace, exposed wooden beams, furnishings designed for comfort rather than aesthetic statement. It had been Elizabeth's sanctuary and later a place for James to experience nature away from the city. Michael hadn't visited since their deaths. Entering now with Sarah leaning heavily against him felt like crossing a threshold between past and future, painful but necessary. Rebecca moved efficiently through the house, activating systems, securing perimeters, preparing the bedroom that had once been James's for Sarah's use. The parallels were not lost on Michael, another child in need of protection, another innocent caught in adult conflicts. But this time the outcome would be different. This time he would not fail. As Rebecca settled Sarah into bed, administering her medication and monitoring her vital signs, Michael established secure communications in the study. Reports from Frank confirmed their escape had not been tracked, but surveillance indicated increased activity around Collins's hospital room, suggesting Victoria's people were converging there, perhaps seeking the same information Morrill and Sarah now pursued. Time was running short on multiple fronts. Sarah rested for several hours, her condition slowly stabilizing under Rebecca's watchful care. By early evening, she was awake again, color returning to her cheeks, strength visibly renewed. "I feel better," she announced as Michael checked on her. "Can we go find Mom's computer now?" Her resilience continued to astonish him. "Tomorrow morning," he promised, "when you've had a full night's rest." Sarah frowned slightly. "But what if Victoria finds it first? The cabin has been empty for weeks, correct?" When she nodded, Michael continued. "Then there's no reason Victoria would connect it to the information we're seeking. She's more likely focused on the hospital, believing your father might have what she wants." This logic seemed to satisfy Sarah, though her expression remained solemn. "When we find Mom's computer, what happens next?" It was the question Michael had been asking himself throughout the afternoon. What endgame could possibly resolve the danger surrounding them? Even with proof of conspiracy within Blackwood, medical, the forces aligned against them, had already demonstrated their willingness to kill their reach within supposedly secure systems, their patience in pursuing their goals across years. "We exposed the truth," he answered, deciding honesty remained their best policy. "Your mother found evidence of people misusing technology meant to save lives." Making that evidence public protects not just you, but everyone who has a HeartGuard device. Sarah considered this explanation, then nodded slowly. That's what Mom would want. She always told Dad that truth matters more than anything. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. Sarah's fingers traced the outline of the locket resting on the bedside table. Dad said I'm like her, stubborn and too smart for my own good. Michael smiled slightly. I believe that's accurate. A comfortable silence settled between them. Not the awkward pause of strangers, but the natural quiet of family members who didn't need constant conversation to feel connected. It struck Michael how quickly this child had carved a place in his life, how natural it felt to sit beside her planning their next steps together. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. Dinner's ready downstairs, and Michael, there's something you should see them afterward. He recognized the subtle signal information not suitable for Sarah's ears. We'll be right down. After ensuring Sarah ate a proper meal and settled in for the night, Michael joined Rebecca in the study where she had established their temporary command center. Multiple screens displayed security feeds from the property perimeter, news reports from Chicago, and encrypted communications from Frank's team. What is it? Michael asked, noting the tension in his sister's posture. Rebecca brought up a news report on the main screen, a Chicago television station covering a breaking story. The headline scrolled across the bottom, Tech Billionaire Accused of Child Abduction. The report showed footage of Victoria Reed, composed attractive, tearfully describing how Michael Blackwood had taken her stepdaughter after manipulating the girl with promises and gifts. The reporter noted that authorities were investigating allegations that Blackwood had previously known Sarah's mother and might have orchestrated recent events to gain custody of the child for unknown purposes. She's controlling the narrative, Rebecca observed grimly, painting you as the villain. Michael watched the footage with cold fury. Victoria, or whoever she truly was, had anticipated their escape and prepared this countermeasure, ensuring that public sympathy and law enforcement resources would turn against him rather than her. Frank's team is already working to counter the allegations, Rebecca continued, and your attorneys are preparing statements clarifying the temporary custody arrangement. But until we have Collins's official documentation and the evidence from Kathleen's computer, we're vulnerable, Michael finished, especially if Collins dies before he can confirm his intentions. A second news alert appeared on screen, a report about David Collins's rapidly deteriorating condition, with hospital sources suggesting he might not survive the night. The report included a statement from his devoted wife, Victoria, expressing heartbreak over her husband's condition and her missing stepdaughter. The performance was masterful, a grieving wife concerned only for her family, victimized by a powerful billionaire with unclear motives. The public would naturally sympathize with her apparent vulnerability against Michael's wealth and influence. She's several steps ahead, Michael acknowledged. She anticipated we'd escape, that we'd seek Collins's evidence. She's positioned herself as the victim before we can reveal her as the perpetrator. What's her endgame? Rebecca questioned. Even if she discredits you and gains custody of Sarah, the evidence Kathleen gathered still exists. Michael considered the question carefully, reviewing everything they had learned. Control, he said finally. The original HeartGuard design contained unauthorized access capabilities, military applications that could potentially control the devices remotely. First-generation models like Sarah's would be vulnerable. But why most patients received upgraded models years ago? Not all. Michael moved to the computer, accessing Blackwood Medical's secure database through his executive credentials. According to our records, approximately 6,000 first-generation devices remain active worldwide, many in high-profile individuals, political figures, military personnel, corporate leaders. He paused as implications crystallized. Imagine having the capability to trigger cardiac events in selected targets untraceable, appearing as natural medical failures. Rebecca's expression shifted from concern to horror as she grasped the scenario. An undetectable assassination tool hiding in plain sight as life-saving medical technology. Exactly. And whoever controls that capability would have extraordinary power, political, military, corporate. Michael closed the database. That's what Kathleen discovered. That's why she was killed. And that's why they're so determined to find what she hid and eliminate anyone who knows about it. The magnitude of the conspiracy was staggering, reaching into the highest levels of Blackwood medical potentially extending to government agencies and beyond. People willing to murder and manipulate to protect access to a weapon no one would suspect existed. Then finding Kathleen's computer isn't just about protecting Sarah, Rebecca concluded. It's about preventing a much larger threat. Yes, Michael's resolve hardened. At first light tomorrow, we find that cabin. And we end this once and for all. As if in response to his determination, a security alert flashed on the perimeter monitors, motion detected at the property's northern boundary. Someone had found them despite all precautions. Victoria's reach was longer, her resources greater than they had anticipated. The final confrontation was coming sooner than expected, with everything at stake. Sarah's life, Michael's freedom, and the lives of thousands of unknowing HeartGuard patients worldwide. The night that had promised temporary sanctuary would instead bring the ultimate test of Michael's promise to protect the daughter he had only just discovered, and with her the truth that could save countless others. Dawn would reveal whether the last protector would triumph or fall. At first light, they set out for Eagle's Nest, guided by Sarah's memories of the remote woodland cabin. The morning sun glinted off fresh snow as their vehicle navigated the winding forest roads. Michael drove with steady concentration, eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror, while Rebecca kept Sarah occupied with gentle conversation. There, Sarah pointed suddenly through frost-etched windows, the eagle tree. True to her description, a massive oak stood sentry at a narrow turnoff, its trunk carved with a weathered eagle spreading wooden wings. The cabin itself nestled in a small clearing, modest, weather-worn but solid, a refuge built to withstand both winter storms and human threats. "Stay in the car," Michael instructed, exchanging a look with Rebecca that conveyed volumes. "I'll check first." The property appeared deserted, snow undisturbed except for animal tracks. Yet Michael approached with cautious vigilance, years of business instinct translating to survival awareness. He circled the perimeter before approaching the door, finding it locked but undamaged. "Clear," he called back to the car, "but stay alert." Inside the cabin was sparse but orderly testament to Colin's methodical nature even in crisis. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, shelves lined with supplies and books, a small kitchen area. Sarah moved unerringly to a wooden floorboard beneath a worn rug, kneeling despite her weakness. "Dad's hiding place," she explained, fingers finding an invisible catch. The board lifted, revealing a dusty laptop sealed in plastic. Mom's computer. Michael handled it reverently, understanding its value beyond information, a mother's legacy to a daughter she couldn't raise. He placed it on the table, connecting it to power. When it flickered to life, a password prompt appeared. Sarah carefully inserted the memory chip from the locket, then typed without hesitation, SARAHMICHAEL2117. "My name and yours," she explained softly, "and my birth year." The screen unlocked, revealing encrypted files with a single text document visible, "Read first." Kathleen's words are restrained across years and death with chilling clarity. "To whoever finds this, if you're reading, I am gone, but the truth must not die with me. Project Pulse isn't a glitch. It's deliberate." The HeartGuard backdoor was installed by General Marshall and his team at DARPA without board approval. 6 devices have already been weaponized for field testing. I've encoded the kill switch protocol in Sarah's medical ID number. Without it, they have control, but not security. "Michael, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about our daughter. I tried, but now she needs you more than ever." Rebecca's soft gasp broke the silence. Marshall, the same Marshall who chairs the Senate Defense Committee, now. Michael nodded grimly, pieces aligning with terrible clarity. "And who's invested heavily in Blackwood Medical through shell companies?" The computer yielded everything: email specifications, test results. A weapon hiding in plain sight as a medical miracle capable of triggering fatal cardiac events in anyone with a first-generation device. A power worth killing for. Frank's call came as they finished downloading the evidence. "Sir, I have news." His voice was heavy with finality. "Collins passed 20 minutes ago, but the attorney Weinstein, he's been found, sir. Dead. Professional hit disguised as robbery. And Victoria vanished, but we've identified her handler, ex-military ties to special operations. This goes higher than we thought." Michael looked at Sarah, small and solemn, in Rebecca's protective embrace. How many more would die to protect this secret? "Implement final protocol," he instructed Frank. Release everything to the three channels we discussed. It was their insurance policy's simultaneous disclosure to trusted journalists, prosecutors, and regulatory officials. Too dispersed to contain, too public to bury. As Michael ended the call, movement flickered at the cabin's edge. Victoria Reed stood in the tree line, no longer bothering with pretense. The copper wig was gone, revealing short military cropped hair. The designer clothes replaced by tactical gear. Behind her, two operatives positioned themselves with practiced precision. "You should have stayed in finance, Blackwood," she called across the snow. "Some secrets aren't meant to be found. And some weapons aren't meant to exist," Michael answered, stepping onto the porch. "It's over, Victoria, or should I say Major Harlow. The files are already in transit." Her face hardened. "Then there's no reason to keep you alive, is there?" The first shot splintered wood by Michael's head. The second never came. Instead, a helicopter thundered overhead, rotors whipping snow into blinding curtains. State police marksmen deployed with mechanical efficiency. Victoria's team found themselves suddenly outmatched, outgunned, exposed. "FBI!" a voice boomed through speakers. Weapons down. Frank's contingencies had worked perfectly. The evidence had reached those with power to act faster than even Michael had anticipated. Victoria's expression shifted from confidence to calculation to resignation. Her weapon lowered, then in one fluid motion swung toward her own temple. "They'll never let me live to testify," she whispered, just loud enough for Michael to hear. The shot echoed across the clearing, silencing even the helicopter's roar for one eternal second. 3 months later, spring sunlight warmed the shores of Lake Michigan. The Blackwood estate gleamed with renewal flowers, where snow had been open windows, where shutters had closed. Sarah sat on the dock legs, dangling above clear water, sketching in the journal Rebecca had given her. At 10 paces behind a security detail, maintained discreet vigilance, a necessity while Marshall's trial proceeded and remaining operatives were identified. Michael joined her, taking a seat on weathered wood. "What are you drawing today?" She tilted the page towards him, three figures before a large house but no longer surrounded by snow. Instead, flowers bloomed around them, and above a fourth figure watched from clouds shaped like eagle's wings. "Dad says he's still watching," she explained with the simple certainty of childhood, "just from farther away." Michael nodded, throat tight. The legal guardianship had been confirmed weeks ago, Collins's final act of protection formalized in courts and documents. But Sarah's heart held the truest custody arrangement. "The first heart guard replacements start next week," he told her. 2,000 patients already scheduled. And the bad people facing justice. The investigation had expanded beyond Marshall to defense contractors, intelligence operatives, corporate conspirators. The weapon had been dismantled before claiming more lives, though too late for Kathleen. From the house, Rebecca waved her smile easier, these days her posture lighter. The foundation offices were nearly complete, its mission expanding beyond Michael's initial vision. The Kathleen and David Fund would ensure every child with heart disease received care, regardless of resources. "Mom would be happy," Sarah said, leaning against Michael's shoulder with the casual trust that still humbled him daily. "She always said truth matters most." She was right, Michael agreed, arms settling around his daughter's shoulders, the daughter he'd found through tragedy, but would protect through life. Behind them, the Blackwood house stood against the spring sky, no longer a fortress but a home. Within its walls, three souls who had each known profound loss had found something unexpected, not replacement for what was gone, but something new, something worth protecting, something like family.